Things that police setting fires in the streets. So you are watching Portland police now trying to break up that crowd. In fact, they've called the protest off tonight, canceled the permit down there.
People started gathering at Szymanski Park about noon today. That's when the people started all gathering together. They didn't leave until about 3 o'clock. But at that point, there was a large group of people dressed head to toe with scarves, all in black. And police had said that they were prepared for anything to take place this afternoon. This was meant to be a peaceful march today, but they were prepared for any activity. We've seen uprisings happen in Portland since last fall with different protests. And so far today, we did see a giant fire in the middle of an intersection. It was at 4th and Morrison. That has been extinguished, and police have told everybody that they must vacate, that this was no longer a mandated march or a march that had a permit that was valid. They did pull that permit, and they were telling people with families to evacuate the area. This is a live look right here, what's left of that fire that was set about 15 minutes ago. You can see it was plastic containers that typically hold different newspapers from around the area, as well as those orange barrels. They did use some like deck chairs that maybe some restaurants put out in front of their establishments to create kind of a barrier down the street, but they were using a lot of plastic and wood for that fire.
Yeah, we understand now 3 people have been arrested near Pioneer Courthouse Square, and we do know Portland police have been trying to shuttle folks in that direction, getting them off the streets as quickly as possible. And as you watch this fire there, right smack in the middle of the street, about 4th and Morrison, the groups you have to feel for are the ones that came out peacefully, and we're hoping to have a peaceful march through the streets today. Applied for the permit, received that, and all was going well until, again, about a half hour or so ago. But again, we have heard of 3 arrests just recently. We'll keep an eye on this situation downtown. You see Portland police now just getting people out of the streets and calm that situation as quickly as possible.
There was some activity, some vandalism that actually started before noon today. Several banks reported vandalism to their doors and other surfaces within the bank, and like a glue-like substance in some of the ATMs, as well as on the doors. Wells Fargo, Chase Bank, Key Bank all reported vandalism to their businesses. Portland police just declared this a riot, and you can see the dozens of protesters evacuating where they were, but they're still marching right through the streets.
We'd like to welcome to K2 News at 5 right now. You are watching live coverage from Chopper 2, as a matter of fact, of groups making their way through the streets. What started out as a very peaceful protest has been broken up by police, has been called a riot now, as police try to move these folks toward Pioneer Courthouse Square, where there have been 3 arrests in the last 15 minutes or so. We are watching this situation very, very closely, and the folks you're watching there is a group of self-proclaimed anarchists who came out, have been facing off against police, and the police say that Molotov cocktails have been thrown at them, as well as bottles and other objects, and that was the reason they called an end to this today.
Let's go now to K2's Reed Andrews, who is live downtown. Reed, what can you tell us what's happening?
Well, right now they have worked on getting this fire out. You can't see actually, because the police car just moved in within the last 40 seconds or so. They are working on making sure that 4th and Morrison stays clear as they continue to try to push the rest of the crowd that has meandered around here closer to Pioneer Courthouse Square. Steve just touched on the fact that there were a handful or a few arrests there. So you can see that this is just continuing to burn right now. No true threat to expand, considering that it's really just burning on itself, and they've been able to take it through. I haven't heard of any Portland firefighters that are making their way here. But yeah, there we go. We're trying to extinguish this fire and at least get more of it out. So here we are in 4th and Morrison. This right here is where this was just lit on fire, and we saw the smoke going up into the 2nd floor, almost the 3rd floor of some of these buildings here as we're near Pioneer Place. The march really got hairy. It really got rough around 2nd Avenue, right around 4:30 or so. Police saying that Molotov cocktails were thrown in their direction, as well as rocks. I saw a series of water bottles as well. From there, they started having flashbangs deployed by Portland police officers with the assistance of Multnomah County deputies who were there as well, assisting them in trying to control this crowd. It was a May Day protest that started around noon near PSU, and it was peaceful for the first 4.5 hours. When they started marching at 3:30, there was definitely some anti-police rhetoric and some chanting and some yelling from people that were dressed all in black with their faces covered. They're self-proclaimed anarchists or anti-fascists. Nonetheless, that group right there, maybe 100 of them, maybe 120 or so, really seem to have caused the bulk of the problems here, if not the entirety of the problems. We also had a Pepsi can thrown in the direction of a Portland medic. Fortunately, that medic was not hurt as a result of a full can of soda being thrown their way. But at this time, as I said, as you said, there were the handful of arrests. It is completely calm right here as they are just watching over this area, trying to make sure that nothing else catches on fire or that the crowd doesn't come back here and try to start something again. That is what we have right now here on 4th and Morrison. Reed Andrews, K2 News.
All right, Reed, stick around there for just a moment. I want to ask you a question. As we watched that video down there, and certainly not the reputation the city of Portland wants, because unfortunately this is the video throughout the country that they'll see tonight. Portland's May Day march once again turning in a bad direction. Reed, question for you. Do you see things breaking up considerably down there right now?
At least from my vantage point, Steve, things have broken up considerably. Unfortunately, I'm kind of at the back end of it. We can't really move too much forward as a result of police blocking the area. So where they have moved those other protesters and marchers, we haven't really been allowed to get to. So we're kind of on an island right here. But as where we are, on kind of the eastern edge of everything, it has died down. And you can see behind us that things are pretty much clear. They still have some areas blocked off here on Morrison, that's 3rd Avenue, that they have blocked off. So things are dying down a bit. There has been some graffiti as well, just a block away from me. So to give you an idea that the people who were told to leave this march didn't necessarily try to leave quietly, as evidenced by this fire that is still smoking just a bit here on 4th and Morrison.
And I'm sure as police watch this activity and as things hopefully start to break up, at least from your vantage point, Reed, they're concerned about nightfall. With a large group still on the streets tonight, we'll certainly see what happens there.
There's been a lot of aggression pointed towards police officers this afternoon. Portland Police Bureau tweeting out that anarchists have destroyed a police car, damaging numerous windows and property, starting fires in the middle of the street, as we saw in downtown Portland, and also attacking police. We've seen the group march away. Police have scattered them out. Let's find out where they're heading right now. Chris Lytle is live downtown. Chris?
Hey, Deb. Yeah, we're live here at Southwest Madison and Park in the South Park blocks where it all began at around noon today. What you're looking at right now is this Antifa group, all these mass protesters that you can see right now that they're throwing objects at police. I believe that was a water bottle. They just tipped over a dumpster. It looks like they might have put some incendiary devices in there to start that fire. You can see police are now moving in, and they're setting off flash grenades to scare the crowd. Just a few minutes ago, you heard Reed say that there was some graffiti. We actually witnessed some mass protesters graffitiing the Coin 6 news car here at the park. So pretty disappointing. You can hear police over the loudspeakers repeatedly say, "This is a riot. Anyone that's still here is subject to arrest and maybe subject to the use of force." That's what they're saying. Really, this is sort of a cat and mouse game right now. We've been following these mass protesters for blocks now. They started at the South Park blocks, made their way towards City Hall, then down over to just about Burnside, and then from there, that's where the fire started on Southwest 4th and Morrison. And you know, really, I just don't see much end in sight. They just keep on pushing these protesters around, and they keep on running around through the city. You can see them picking up trash cans and newspaper stands and flipping them over in the street. They're blocking traffic. Really a dangerous situation for folks, and very disappointing for folks who came here to have a proper protest, to have a solid march, which, as Reed told you, only took about an hour, and then it was complete chaos.
And we need to point that out to folks watching this at home, because quite often in recent years when you hear May Day protests, unfortunately you see a video like this, but it really is one particular group that came in toward the end of this march that's causing the majority of the problems, right, Chris?
Yeah, that's right. This Antifa group, which is an anti-fascist group, and then there's a couple other fringe groups, as they're known as, that really cause the problems. We were up in the front of the march in the beginning, and really it was truly wonderful. It was what you would want to see out of a march. It was a bunch of families, different organizations, groups, nonprofits, all leading in one cause. But now it's just, it seems like let's destroy Portland is maybe the motto here. Because that's what it is. A lot of fires, there's a lot of damage. We're seeing broken windows, we're seeing graffiti. We're seeing graffiti on news cars. This is getting a little out of hand, if I can tell you that, Steve.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, we're seeing them, and we've seen this.
It looks like
go ahead, Chris.
We're having our. Well, we're seeing, I'm having Eric move ahead here. You can see that construction sign being dragged into the middle of the street here. If I could estimate, I'd say about, 80 to 100 folks in black masks just, looks like destroying the city.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're
it's
doing.
Disappointing. And here we go. We see police coming on. Well, Steve, we see police coming in the other side, so now we're going to see, it looks like they're trying to squeeze them. And we'll make sure we're safe here. We're about a block away.
Yeah, please do that. And as you're doing that, Chris, we should also talk about the fact that, once again, we've seen this in protests in recent months as well, that we've seen a dramatic shift in the way the Portland Police Bureau deals with protesters now who act in this way. In the past, I don't think we would have seen the aggressive stance that the Portland Police Bureau has taken, certainly under the new mayor, where they make a decision and they are on it, particularly when they called off this march so fast this afternoon after a couple of projectiles were thrown.
And there seem to be a lot more people, the troublemakers, the people who are not there for the purpose of the march, causing the vandalism, than what we've seen in the previous marches. Maybe we've seen a dozen or a couple. Oh, you can see I hope our photographer is in a safe spot.
Yeah, you see the police right there battling out with some of these folks right on the street.
Let's get out.
But as you were saying, the quick action by Portland police, it is at an elevated level.
You guys see that?
In years past. Yes, Chris, we did just see that.
Yeah. And certainly the folks at home watching this who are frustrated, who love this city and are watching this large group go through and burn things and throw things into the street and throw things at police officers, I'm sure are relieved to see the stance that the Portland Police Bureau is taking.
Chris, can you go back over and tell us what we just witnessed?
So you guys... Yeah, sure. So what happened here was actually I think they actually had a pretty decent strategy, or at least had a strategy to begin with. What essentially happened, I'll kind of paint the picture for you. We're at Southwest 5th and Jefferson, which is, if you know, Portland, just below the Wells Fargo Center. So what happened here was that a group of the mass protesters were making their way south on 5th, and Portland police had a bunch of TriMet buses roll through here and essentially created like a, you could say, a line. And then they had Portland police came in from either end and basically squeezed the group. They had police in riot gear and protective gear come in from one side, and then they had police come in from the other side. And when the protesters who didn't get initially arrested or detained by police were then squeezed through the buses, and there were police waiting right on the other side for them. So right now they're really just trying to get this situation under control. Just a few minutes ago, I'd say 5 minutes ago, it was not under control. Now there's a sense of calm. There's a lot of folks being arrested. police are searching different folks. They're pulling down the masks. They're going through the shirts to make sure that they don't have any weapons before they get into the police car. To give you a number on maybe how many folks are sitting in handcuffs right now, plastic zip ties, I would say ballpark anywhere from 12 to 24 people.
Yeah, that's probably around. And we talked about, Chris, I'm sure part of the strategy here is try and corral these folks before nightfall, because that's when it's a little bit tougher to get the situation under control when the sun goes down. But once again, folks, about 5:11 in the evening now, you were watching what's been declared a riot in downtown Portland this evening. Started out as a very peaceful May Day march. Thousands of people, crowd estimated about 5,000, in fact, walking through the streets. All was well until about 45 minutes ago when a large group that came in at the end, self-proclaimed anarchists, have been causing lots of problems for police, lighting fires in the streets, throwing projectiles at the officers. We've had several arrests now. We're watching one of them right there on the street as we speak. Our crews are covering this very, very closely for you. We're up in the air with a chopper too as well. But this is, again, one of those scenes that so many people hate to see, particularly the ones who came out in a peaceful fashion today.
And there are a lot of people documenting what is happening with video and taking pictures. In fact, Portland police say so many criminal acts have been committed during this May Day march in Portland that they'd like to see those pictures or video that you've taken. So they want you to send any information that you might have to crimetips@portlandoregon.gov. They've seen a lot of fires being set in the middle of the street, as well as some of these people stealing traffic control devices. We saw that as well. So plenty of vandalism, broken windows, police cars, news cars being vandalized. And now you can see police are aggressively taking people into custody now. And
police, of course, saying if you do not need to come downtown, do not do it. Do not do it. It is considered a riot down there as we speak. I want to bring in Angela Murphy now from TriMet. Angela, you there?
I am.
Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it very much. Give me the situation, the rundown on TriMet. What's the latest?
We are putting out alerts right now to our passengers just to expect additional delays due to the protests in the Central Business District. We are holding or just holding trains and buses until it's safe to move through the area. We haven't stopped service, but we are going to hold until the roads are clear and safe for our riders and operators.
That's got to be a little frustrating for you folks as well, along with the riders, I would imagine, Angela.
You know, it is it's frustrating when we can't get people to where they need to go. We respect the right to protest, but when it starts to impact people negatively like this, it is frustrating on all fronts.
Yeah, okay. Angela Murphy from TriMet, thank you. We'll make sure to get that out there. And Angela points out something that we need to reiterate, is that there's not a city in America, likely, that appreciates a peaceful protest more than Portland. But when it turns like this, all of a sudden it gives you a different look at it, and we don't appreciate this at all because it's damaging the city we all live in. And
it turned quickly. In the beginning of the march, we saw a line of children in the beginning holding banners and flags. So a lot of families did come down to this march earlier today. It started at noon. It took off from the park at about 3 o'clock, and it didn't take too long for things to get out of hand, where police did pull the permit for this march and told families to evacuate the area. Now, as we heard from our reporter Chris Lytle, who is at the scene, between 12 and 24 people now in zip tie handcuffs as police try to get this situation under control. We've seen plenty of fires being set in the middle of the street, a lot of vandalism, windows broken, spray painted, and also traffic control devices being used and destroyed as well in downtown Portland. But as you can see, this scene, this is police going through the pockets of many of the people who are there dressed head to toe in black with scarves over their faces and believed to have caused some of the vandalism downtown. This is the camera you're looking at. That's where Chris Lytle and his crew are down there now watching the situation for us. And Chris, I want to bring you back in if we can. And let's talk about, because it's difficult from our vantage point to see how many people are in the zip ties and perhaps at least apprehended at this point. Can you give us an eye on that?
Yeah, you know, I was trying to count just before you tossed to me there, you know, again, I'd say somewhere between 12 to 24 folks. And then there's just a lot of other folks that are watching. You can hear police trying to come in. They're trying to bring in some more cruisers, and I'm not sure if that's to help take people away or if that's more resources heading in here. To the right here, I'll have Eric turn. You can see the police van there that they're loading folks who are being detained. They're putting them in that van there so they could take a bunch away all at once. You can see just closer to us behind these officers in their personal protective gear. You can see officers or protesters there in plastic zip ties, police officers searching their belongings before they get taken away. Again, it's still fairly calm down here after all those folks were put into plastic zip ties and either taken away or searched. It's gotten very, very calm here. As these buses are starting to move, we're seeing some more folks on the other side. There's a gentleman laying down in front of the TriMet bus who that's where he was taken down by police. And you see even more folks there lined up, so we might see that number grow. Steve?
Yeah, no doubt. I'm sure we will. My curiosity at this point is if because I'm sure the group splintered off to a certain extent, where the rest of them went, and whether that was toward Pioneer Courthouse Square. I know that's where police were trying to funnel them to, so I'll be anxious to see. And at some point, I'm not sure if Chopper 2 is still in the air, and perhaps we can get a shot from that, talking to the booth here, so we can get a better, wider look at what's happened to the rest of that crowd down there. But once again, this was a very, very large group in the beginning. Some estimates 5,000 or more, and we can tell you the majority of them were very, very peaceful, just moving through the streets. They took out a permit for this days in advance, and things were moving well. They were chanting about immigration and wages and what have you, and then suddenly it took a turn once projectiles were thrown at police and fires started in the streets.
And Steve, you spoke to this. The reaction from Portland police was very swift on this. They did not want things to escalate to a point of being out of control or out of hand. Once those projectiles were thrown and windows started being damaged, they moved in quickly.
They certainly did. You can see there, standing strong, Portland police, hoping this thing just kind of dies down now. That would be the key for them, that they bust this thing up early, they get this group out of the way, they arrest several of these folks, and they can move on with their evening. But again, I'm sure concerns as the sun goes down, what might happen next. TriMet, in case you just tuned in, we talked to Angela Murphy from TriMet, saying they do have some additional delays, and they're actually holding their trains and their buses right now. We do see a bus on the move, but they are holding their buses, at least they were 5 minutes ago, until things really die down there. They don't want to put their
Steve,
passengers...
Can I jump in?
Yeah, jump in, please, Chris.
Hey, Steve. Yeah, as we're seeing these buses depart the area here, again, this is Southwest 5th and Jefferson, just below the Wells Fargo Center. There's actually passengers on those TriMet buses. So we'll have to learn more from Portland police, and it's something we'll certainly follow up on. But exactly how they coordinated this was pretty unique. And I also do want to mention, before we toss it back to you, that as each protester is being loaded into that police van, the spectators, the folks who maybe were in these buildings or saw what was going on downtown, who came out here, they're clapping. They're saying, "Thank you, Portland police, for making these arrests." Certainly a very dynamic scene down here. Steve?
Yeah.
Well, it definitely creates a scar for the city when you see situations like this take place. And as Steve mentioned earlier, this will be the video, the footage that you see nationally of what happened, what took place in our city today for the May Day protest. And it's disruptive to the people's lives who are down there for work, for business, and when they see their property being damaged as well. It's quite a disruption.
Yeah, let's go back to Reed Andrews. We haven't talked to him in a while. He was at the tail end of that protest earlier. Where are you, Reed, now? Give us an update if you can, sir.
Well, we're on the west side of City Hall, and I can pan over there and you can see what we've got going on. This an arrest. That person with zip ties about to be put in the back seat of a Portland police SUV. Then we have got just an array, a caravan of TriMet buses that have been held up as a result of this being shut down. Given the time of day and given where we are here on 5th Avenue and Jefferson on the backside of City Hall, there are a lot of buses that go through here along the transit corridor. They all backed up as a result. We don't exactly know what went down to lead to that person being arrested, but if we can see just there is obviously some of their belongings being taken and put in the back of the police car as well. Right now we're on a little bit of a showdown right now between protesters and police. No incidents right now at this moment, at least from my vantage point, as you just see kind of a snail's crawl of the buses trying to move through. Some police cars here just kind of blocking the area for any other traffic that's trying to move through as well. And then people just standing on the sidewalk. They're being forced on the sidewalk. Again, around 4:30, they were all told this is an unpermitted march as a result of Molotov cocktails and rocks being thrown at police officers. I didn't see any Molotov cocktails. I did see some rocks. I did see bottles of water, full bottles of water, being thrown at police officers as well. From there, they tried to break up the group that was marching north on 2nd Avenue towards Burnside. They then pushed them along Morrison to here where we are now at 5th Avenue and Jefferson on the backside of City Hall, and they are protecting City Hall in particular, not letting anybody get on the sidewalk there because of probably, I would assume, a history of vandalism towards City Hall that we saw throughout the past year or so, with a lot of tagging going on. City council meetings have been canceled, so it would not be unrealistic to think that the marchers could head to City Hall and try to tag that with graffiti or destruct it in any capacity. That is why Portland police have kept that sidewalk on 5th Avenue completely shut down. You can see this Ford Excursion that we've got coming our way as well. It's about to be moving our way. It's white and it's got a lot of different police officers or deputies. I can't tell right now. I can't get a look on exactly who that is, but they're going to be making their way here as well to try to break up this crowd a bit more. Here on the sidewalk, though, everything is smooth and without issue. But as Chris told you, still a pretty charged event right now as we are at past 5 o'clock. Steve, I know you had said that you worry about what will happen at nighttime. A definitely reasonable concern. We will not have sunset here until around 8:15 or so tonight, maybe just a touch earlier. So these people will have to stay on their feet and marching for quite some time before we have to worry about darkness setting in. So that could be a variable that will make things a little different than when we had the post-Trump election protests. Obviously very early sunsets then, which sort of let things hit a crescendo and amplify that much more. So our longer days this time of year may make it so that people maybe have just kind of lost all their energy and will decide to go home. What I can tell you, this protest not nearly as big as some of those, as well as not having nearly as many people in this protest. Were mainly a lot of families, a lot of nonprofits and the like going for certain causes. There really was just 120 or so people, all in black clothing with masks on, that seem to have caused the majority, if not all, of the problems that we had here today in terms of property destruction and projectiles being thrown at police. So that's the latest that we have here downtown 5th Avenue on the backside of City Hall. Reed Andrews, K2 News.
Okay, Reed, thank you. At this point, we want to show you some video of something happened a little bit earlier today. Portland police tweeted out that one of their SUVs was destroyed, and you can see this is video of that happening right there with flares being lit onto the police car. This is around the same area, I believe, where the fire took place. You can see the different pieces of debris in the middle of the road, but you can see the flare that they lit inside the SUV, destroying that police SUV for the Portland Police Bureau, and you can see on the side of it as well some vandalism that they spray painted on the side of the Portland police car.
You are watching live coverage right now, K2, as we are following what's happening in downtown Portland. Number of Portland police officers on the streets now after they have closed down a protest, a May Day protest. It has been declared a riot down there. Started very much in peaceful fashion, and things took a turn about an hour ago, and a large group of anarchists causing problems, throwing things at police, some Molotov cocktails, in fact, according to police, and several of them have been arrested. We're hearing a possible possibility of dozens arrested at this point. We still see a large group assembled at downtown Portland right now, but a quick response by the Portland Police Bureau for sure. And we've seen this the last several protests, including the anti-Trump protest back in January, where the police came out in force and quickly extinguished what could have been a much worse situation. But I also think you may be watching a community that's getting fed up with what's going on with some of these protests and wanting a quicker response from Portland police, and that's what you're seeing tonight.
It seemed as if everything was elevated today. Portland police response was swifter than it has been in past protests that we've seen, and also businesses were prepared, have been more prepared for events, and may have been conveying to Portland officials that they don't want to allow this type of behavior. And you saw more anarchists or more people who were out there to cause problems arrive on the scene and march with the protesters that were there with the given permit for this May Day march. So it seems as if everything was elevated today.
Yeah, let's talk about, we told you about a couple of fires have been set in the streets. I think one was about 4th and Morrison. Some of these folks threw chairs and patio furniture and pylons and you name it into this fire. Rich Chapman from Portland Fire is going to join us on the phone now. Rich, you there, sir?
I am.
Let's talk about what happened here as far as the fire goes. Are you folks prepared for something like this? Because we've seen in the past some of these protests where the protesters will indeed just start fires right smack in the middle of the street. Are you guys prepared for this when we see a protest of this nature?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. We certainly can't predict what kind of activity we're going to see with protests like this. We can only just get our resources in place so that we can respond in case there were multiple injuries or in case there were multiple fires. What we do have is good information. We're working closely with police to get good, accurate, and timely information about what's going on. At this point, we're able to report that there are several small fires, but nothing that's extended to a building or created a bigger problem than a garbage can fire at this point. We're also really concerned about possible injuries out there, and at this point, we're not hearing of any serious injuries. So I guess the answer to your question is we do have the communication tools in place. We just recently were able to get our firefighter EMTs embedded with those police units. So we feel like we've done all we can to prepare for today's events like today. Now we've got to see what happens.
Yeah, hopefully the fires are out for tonight, Rich. Let's hope they're done with that. But we thank you, sir, for joining us. We appreciate that very much. We're going to continue to watch the situation downtown Portland. I can tell you this, that at 5:30 tonight, we're going to take a break for world news. In the meantime, we want to, again, set up what is happening on the streets as Portland police have declared it a riot down there after a May Day protest, which started out very, very peaceful, turned not so about an hour ago, and police have broken up a large group, arrested many, and at this point they are watching the situation very, very closely as we make sure that things stay that way for now.
We watched as it seemed to really come to a point where they were able to take control of the situation, and several protesters were arrested or they were put into zip-tie handcuffs. Portland police just tweeting out that the riot has subsided for the moment. Officers will continue to have a presence downtown. They'll continue to patrol downtown as things continue to de-escalate. But it looks as if the majority of the problem has subsided, and now at this point it's a matter of just making sure that it stays at a low level.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, we haven't received official word from TriMet that their buses and trains are running again, but we received visual evidence that it appears as though they are, as we saw a couple of buses on the move with passengers on them. We had heard from TriMet a short time ago that they were actually holding their trains and buses, hoping this thing would die down a bit. They were concerned, of course, about the passengers and the drivers as well. And once we do get official word from TriMet, we will let you know that they are on the move. K2, I promise you this, is on the ground and in the air. As we see from Chopper 2, a shot there on your left. We have crews on the ground as well, covering this story very, very closely for you. We'll stay on top of it. We're going to take a break for world news now. We're going to come back, of course, Facebook Live. We have all the different means of social media. We'll be back at 6 o'clock with more local news. We'll see you then, folks.